Climb into the cockpit with pilot and LinkSquares Chief Legal Officer Tim Perilla as he invites legal leaders aboard to share advice that will help you navigate even the most turbulent times of in-house counsel work. We'll cover a range of topics from data privacy to legal team structure to public company transactions and beyond. You don't want to miss this series. Fasten your seatbelt and prepare for takeoff. You're listening to Cockpit Counsel.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Cockpit Counsel. My name is Tim. I'm the Chief Legal Officer at LinkSquares, and today with me, I have Dee Venello and I have Vanessa Saffold, both outstanding leaders in the legal ops field, and we're gonna get into it here. We're gonna have a great conversation about legal ops. So, Vanessa, starting with you, I ask everybody this question at the beginning of every episode: what is your pre-flight ritual?
Well, my pre-flight ritual starts with, after I've done all my packing, I'm ready to go. I like to just sit for a moment and just think about, what I'm doing, make sure that I remember everything, because you can always get somewhere and forget something. So I always just take a few minutes and just get quiet and make sure that I remember, everything that I'm taking with me. Nice.
Dee, what about you?
So I have a slight fear of flying.
Okay.
Truthfully. So every flight, I have to bring noise canceling headphones. So my pre-flight ritual is to make sure that those headphones are with me, because if they are not, it's not a good flight. I need all sound to be blocked.
Okay. Is it the noises bother you about flying then?
It's just everything. So if I can just drown out everything and just not focus on
on what's happening,
what's going on, and just focus on what's in my ears, then I'm okay.
All right.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, let's get into it. I'd love to learn a little bit about both your backgrounds. I know obviously we've had several conversations before, but would really like to understand sort of what brought you into the legal ops profession, how you found yourself where you are today, what your sort of journey was, both on a personal level and sort of a corporate career path level. So, Dee, maybe we start with you.
Sure. So my background is actually kind of a interesting roadmap. I started out in the medical field and decided that's not what I want to do for the rest of my life. So I started to work in fintech, which is where I met Danielle Shear. And so I started working on contracts first and got my, hands into that space, and then started to do more of the corporate work alongside her, and learned that that's really what I wanted to focus on.
Okay.
And so I came to Commvault in November and as legal ops manager. And so this is my first legal ops gig, really. And so it's been transformational, and I love this space, and I love the people who I've been able to meet in the industry. So yeah, really happy to be here and to talk about it.
Awesome. Vanessa, how about you?
Well, I got my start actually working at a law school.
Okay.
And I think that was excellent because I learned that there are so many different areas of law. And then I went corporate.
Okay.
And I started to specialize in, intellectual property, contracts, due diligence for business transactions, corporate. And as a result, I consider it like building blocks. So I think all of those gave me building blocks to land into legal operations. So when I did transition into it, it was after I was a senior contracts manager with a whole team of contracts managers. And because I was the legal liaison to the finance and HR teams, then it kind of made sense at the time that it would transition into legal operations. So 5 years later, here I am. And I feel like it was finally something to describe what I do, because I've done so many diverse things, processes and putting things in place, implementing, software, even researching and choosing it, that when I found out that there was a legal operations, that was it for me. So
That's awesome. That's great. It is a relatively new field here. So for people who are not familiar with what all is encapsulated by legal operations, I'd love to hear from each of you. Vanessa, maybe we start with you. If you had to describe legal operations as a role or as a function within the legal org of a company, how would you describe that to someone who has no idea?
Well, I would start by saying that I think it's the wheels that make the legal department turn, and I would say that it's a swim lane in the legal department that is separate from the attorneys and the paraprofessionals that are in the department. The legal operations also is kind of PR and a liaison for the rest of the organization. Legal ops, we build relationships with other teams to help us to, accomplish the things that we need to accomplish to help the legal department work.
Excellent.
Exactly right. Yeah. And I think too, what's awesome about legal operations is that there's no one size fits all for each company, right? And there's no, every company does things a little bit differently. And so, but I think the building connections and relationships is a huge one for me that I've learned. We work cross-functionally with so many different departments that you have to build those relationships in order to create efficiencies and process improvement and change. And so that's huge in a legal ops role.
That's awesome. So one of the things that I talk a lot about on this series is partnering with sales and partnering with different parts of the organization. Predominantly to date, it's been really talking with different sales leadership about how do you make that legal sales bond closer so that we can be a little bit more efficient in the way that we work together. Dee, who do you think about as your primary go-to when you think, okay, it's my day one on the job, I need to start building relationships? What are those critical relationships that you're looking at?
Yeah, it's a great question. First, I start with the sales and business ops because we have to work so closely with them, right? And so they are the first people I go to say, hey, here's what we're trying to implement, here's what we're doing, it's nice to meet you, and let's work together, let's partner together. They touch sales, right? So if we can create that relationship right from the start, then that relationship with sales gets 10 times better. And so building that from the get-go is important.
Absolutely. Yeah. Vanessa, what about you? What's your go-to? I know you mentioned finance in there too, so love to.
But I go straight to technology. I go straight to the tech department because one of the first things that I want to know is what do we already have.
Right.
And sometimes, the legal team has platforms and tools, but across the organizations, there may be other tools that the legal department can use that maybe the legal department doesn't know about.
Right.
So, and not only that, as Dee was saying, in terms of, implementations and integrations, I think they're really good people to know.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point. One of the systems that I get a lot of raised eyebrows from people when I tell them about this that we used at DraftKings was we used Jira heavily for asset reviews because we had a lot of the whether it's review of a television ad or just banner ads and things like that. And you're looking at dividing things from jurisdiction to jurisdiction because they had different regulatory requirements for calls to action and things like that, and making sure the disclaimers were all where they needed to be. And we were able to actually track them we found that Jira was the most efficient way for us to track those assets, which was pretty interesting. But that's a great call out, actually going, what technology do we already have as an organization? So when you think about building those relationships, and either one of you can respond or both can choose not to respond if you want. What have been some of the challenges that you've dealt with in trying to build those relationships? Have you seen pushback from leadership or others within the organization, or has it been relatively smooth and seamless?
Do you want to go?
Sure. Yeah, I think I think sometimes when you're trying to implement something new or trying to change things that have been the way that they've always been, you get that a lot, right?
Yeah.
And so there could be pushback there of, well, this is just always how we've done it. And so, sometimes I think it's good to shed a different perspective of, well, maybe we shouldn't think about it that way. Maybe there's a different way, more efficient way that can help not only legal, but other teams to cross a bridge, right? And so I also think that for our legal team, we want to be looked at as trusted advisors. And so one of the first things that I said when I came to Commvault was, how can I help?
Yeah.
Right? Just being open and saying, here's what I see, but how can I help?
Right.
Maybe I see things differently because it's a brand new set of eyes, but what's really important that needs to change and where can I add value? And I think that then trickles down into our entire legal team, because then everybody says, how can we help? So I think those two things are really big when building relationships when you get pushback.
Yeah, and I also think that it depends on the organization size.
Okay.
Right, because I've been at a startup before, and it was very easy to find the tech people and easy to build the relationships, right? Especially a lot of startups have the open floor plan. So, oftentimes you can just look over your desk and you might be sitting across from a tech person.
Right.
But in a larger organization, it could be a little bit trickier, right? Because you don't know who the right person is to go to, and and that sort of thing. And I kind of do it like chipping away at something. So I might not know the person, but then I get to know people who know people. And so networking is really very important, that, if you partner with someone who perhaps has been with the organization for a while, you say, hey, who can I reach out to for this? I'm having a little bit of trouble doing this. And then, when you partner with someone that's been with the organization, it usually helps you a lot.
Yeah, exactly. Having somebody in there to help you navigate some of the nuances is always good. I found that just most of my my jobs since I've graduated law school, I've been the first in-house attorney, and built the legal team from there. And that has always been the most critical thing for me, is like, I don't know anything about this organization, and I barely know what I'm doing from a legal perspective. So how can I find somebody that I can really trust to be vulnerable enough with to help guide me through sort of getting to know the organization, and it's been an incredible opportunity to get to make meaningful relationships with people that, quite frankly, in many ways I wouldn't have crossed paths with at all. So, real quick, tell me about the size of your legal ops teams. Is it just you? Do you have more than you? What does the structure look like?
Right now, it's just me.
Okay.
But I have had teams where I've had 7 people, up to 7 people. So It's been 7 people, it's been 4 people, it's been 2 people, and now it's just me.
Okay, great. What about you, Dee?
We're a team of 2.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
We're a team of 2 and growing.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's I'd love to hear Vanessa a little bit more about how you found either challenging or more rewarding, or just kind of different among, like, as you've seen the size of the legal ops team grow.
Well, I think when you can have growth with the legal ops team, then you can attend to the needs of the department better, right? Yeah. So part of the legal ops was the whole contracts team, right? Mm-hmm. So I got them so that it was a well-oiled wheel. And so I didn't, we had the implementation, everything went fine. Yeah. So, that wheel is going. But then there are other things like due diligence for business transactions. Well, sometimes you need a process in order to do things like if you're collecting all of the documents, if you're putting them in a data room, then you can have a swim lane for that. So I think that, where right now it's just myself, and I'm handling all of those things, that it elevates the position when you're able to, have people for the different areas. And now you can really get behind the strategies and the metrics and, the other things that help you to get the resources that you need.
Yeah, absolutely. And Dee, for you, going from 1 to 2, seeing that step function, how has that been for you?
Yeah, it's very similar to what Vanessa was just saying, because when you are really in the weeds, right, and you're really trying to harness, okay, what's this process look like? How do we build this well-oiled machine? How does this function when I take a step back? That's when you build your team, you can say, okay, this person can actually oversee that train and make sure it's running on time and it's just got what it needs. And then, you can then say, okay, I can focus on more strategic work, or we've been really wanting to work on X. We just haven't been able to get there. Now I can. And so that's it takes you from out of the weeds and it brings you, above the trees a little bit, which is great, because then you can start thinking and planning and getting the wheels turning on other projects.
But it's a good place to start.
Yeah.
Because if you're the only one, then you can assess everything that's going on and then determine what it is that you need.
Right.
As opposed to coming in and there's already a team, then you have to, really determine, do I have everything that I had? Do I need more? Do I have more than what I need? And really kind of work backwards into making sure that the legal department has what it needs.
Yeah.
And this way, whoever's joining your team, you can train them, you can teach them, because you have the knowledge, the confidence to say, okay, here's how this runs, here's how this operates. If you come in, above the trees without being kind of in the forest, you don't always know what that ground looks like.
Right.
So it's so important.
So tell me a little bit more about building relationships with the attorneys on your team. I know just attorneys I've worked with can be pretty territorial from time to time. Have you experienced any of that, and how have you worked with the attorneys on the team to really get some quick wins with them to get them on your side?
Go ahead.
Okay. I think a large piece of legal operations is having patience and listening, and I think that's where we build the best relationships with our teams, because especially from a contracts perspective, I mean, we see what's happening from a process point of view, but we're not in the contract itself, right? So the interactions that they're having with sales and the way that things are moving and operating, sometimes we don't see that. And so I think that the biggest thing that I've learned thus far is to have patience, right? Not the process you put in place might not always be the right one. You might have to tweak it. And 2 is just being open and listening to what your team says and brings to you. And when you make those changes that they've provided, they trust you.
Right.
And that's huge,
Yeah, I think one of the things that I make sure that I do is schedule one-on-ones with them. And it's not just like necessarily an open conversation. I like to ask questions like, what do you spend your time doing? What do you wish that you were doing that you didn't do?
Right.
What do you think the department needs? And I start asking those probing questions to get into here and into their day-to-day, so that I can find out how I can create an efficiency for them. And sometimes through talking to them, they come up with their own efficiency. All I have to do is take it and run with it, because I know that it might be feasible. Yeah. So I think that's, and it gives them the feeling that someone is listening.
Yeah.
And then it's not like, the drudgery of day to day. Oh, this is, I'm dealing with sales with this and that sort of thing. And the other thing is presenting them with the metrics, because sometimes you want to report up the metrics, right?
Right.
But it's also important that they know what the metrics are, that they know what they're doing, that they know how things are working. And sometimes that changes their whole attitude about how they feel about things, because they might have a negative attitude, but then they realize, oh, we're doing this much. Oh, this is working really well. Oh, we're really doing some things.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you mentioned a couple of times data. What are you seeing with your teams, the most important data that they're tracking?
Well, I will say that it's all about the story that you tell. And so when I started, the story that we were telling was contracts in, contracts out. Like, what is the volume of contracts? What is the SLA? And that sort of thing. Well, that really, to me, is not really impressive unless you can drill down and tell other stories. And so, one of the things that I, would like to capture is what is the value of those contracts? Because you can say, oh, we did 500, contracts. Okay, we did 500, and last quarter we did 400, right? But if they hear we did 500 and they were worth $25 million, then now they have something to sit up about and say, oh, okay, we're really contributing to the bottom line of the company. So that is one that I definitely like to have. And then something else, it's not just about the contracts and the volume, that it's also about, well, what is the quality of those requests that came in? What was the level of work that you had to do? Was something missing? That sort of thing. So I think that, and I think that all fits in with the SLA, because if someone doesn't provide you with the right information, that's going to take you longer to do it. And so now that's messing with your SLA. So if you work backwards from those kind of metrics, then you can fix those things and the SLAs can improve.
Yeah, that's excellent.
Yeah, and I think going off of that too, we use it to track workloads and such, like, things similar. One of the key pieces that you said that what we do often is, are you negotiating the same thing? We have master terms, right? Are you negotiating the same clause in the same section, and do we need to change it? Does something need to get added to our playbook? So I think we track metrics that way. We track, okay, how many times has this been negotiated? What about our security documents, right? Do those need to be updated? Are we seeing the same things? And so, not only from a contracts in, contracts out, how many are we producing, right? Americas, international, what does it look like? But also granularity in the contract itself is huge.
Yeah, that's a big thing. I mean, no matter where you are in the organization, it's really important to understand what's in your contracts and what people are looking at, and spending the most time on what's most important to your customers. Whether you're the account executive, like, you probably want to know what's most important to your customers if you're trying to sell to them. If you're the lawyers doing the review, you want to know that. It's incredibly valuable to have that kind of insights into the work that's being done. So when you distill down sort of your personal views on what your role is, and like, what is the one thing from a legal ops perspective, from a career perspective, that you want to be known for? What do you want your career to stand for? Like, when someone says, Vanessa as a legal ops leader, this is the first thing that comes to mind. What is that? What is your brand as a legal ops pro?
Results driven.
Awesome.
Definitely. I at the end of the day, I want for someone to say, she came in, she got the data, she made efficiencies, and as a result, these are all the things that the legal department can do now. So I like to say that it's results.
That's awesome. Dee, what about you?
Yeah. What comes to my mind is elevation. So how do I best elevate not only the legal team, but the other departments around me and the company? And what impact does that have? Yeah,
that's awesome. That's absolutely awesome. So let's switch gears maybe a little bit. Maybe it's not that much. Let's talk about tech. How important is the tech to you? Maybe we start with you, Dee. What is obviously both LinkSquares customers, and we can talk about that. But even apart and aside from LinkSquares, what other tech are you using? What are some of the other things that you're really focused on that tech needs to deliver for you?
Yeah, we use a sanctions screening tool, which is very valuable. We're a global company and we do business all over the world, so that's very important. And we have a corporate governance tool as well to manage our entities, as well as LinkSquares.
Yeah.
So it's what keeps the legal team moving and running and being efficient. From a LinkSquares perspective, we implemented and migrated all data and everything within like 30 days. I think it was one of the fastest. It was insane, actually, how quickly we got it up and running, but it was really wild. But it integrates with Salesforce. That's a really big piece of the puzzle we were trying to solve. Sales doesn't need to leave Salesforce. They can stay there. They have all their communication with the legal team. And then the key departments that we were cross-functionally with, they go on the backside and they're in LinkSquares. And so it's so valuable to have these tools to drive business growth and to keep everybody on the same page and have transparency. And we see that with our corporate governance tool as well. So I think it brings departments together too, creates a bond there.
Absolutely.
I think it depends, right? I think the lawyer's statement, it depends. But I think that it depends because there's a such thing as having too much technology.
Yeah.
And so you can get overwhelmed with technology and then not be efficient, right? So I think the most important thing is knowing what you have. Having your processes in place so that you can incorporate the tools in those processes so that you're not driven by the tools.
Right.
You're driving the tools, right?
Right.
And so with us, we use Salesforce. We also, DocuSign is an integration with Salesforce. So in the sellers not having to leave Salesforce, they can have documents signed directly from there.
Mm-hmm.
On the back end, we use LinkSquares Analyze.
Mm-hmm.
That was a huge solve for us because our contracts were in a few different places and we know what was in the contracts, right?
As is usual.
Yeah. And so when there's a request that comes through for legal ops to say, do we have this company's contracts or do we have this in our contracts? It's a project.
Yeah.
And, if you are taking time out of your day for that kind of project, then you don't have time to do the other things. So it was really kind of inefficient. And so bringing in LinkSquares Analyze, now when we're doing a remediation or if we're doing something and we just want to know about offshoring, then we know that we can just go in there and run a report and have those results like that. Yeah. Major time saver. Our company has lots of tools, and so legal as a core uses those tools. But then there are other tools like Smartsheets, which is good on a project basis, which we actually were able to get our most recent metrics. We did like a survey of our contracts to find out is it company paper or third party paper. The was it complete? What was wrong with it? That sort of thing. Mm-hmm. And Smartsheets was really good for that sort of thing. But once again, I think it's really important that you don't overwhelm yourself with the technology, but know what you have and know what you need, and then bring it together.
Yeah, that's great advice, and that's one thing that I tell people a lot when asked about like, okay, what's the best software to buy? And for me, it's the one that you use, right? Because I say it a lot. It's not enough to buy the software. You got to buy into the software. And as a legal team, whether you're a really litigation heavy shop, maybe you're doing a ton of M&A, maybe you're doing SaaS contracts, it doesn't matter. You have certain things that you're going to want to track on a regular basis. And if you're allowed to do that with software, then if you don't actually interact with that software 100% of the time, the output from that software is not going to be as effective as you want it to be, right? It's kind of like don't expect to not change at all what you're doing and expect that piece of software to work for you. I use the example of Salesforce, right? Like if you're a Salesforce shop, like could you imagine a world where all of your account executives are calling people and they're like, you know what, I'll just update Salesforce at the end of the month. Like how effective is that really going to be? It just won't be. And there's no way it's going to be updated well. And so, legal departments for too long have deprioritized that organization, have deprioritized buying into a particular type of software, even just a process, right? I've seen so many in-house leaders say like, oh, we've got like this folder structure that I standardized, and we have like this Excel spreadsheet that everyone's supposed to update. And it's like, okay, I just can't wait until like one thing goes wrong and your entire, like, it happens because as an in-house team, you're not always graded as heavily on your organization as you would be if you were at a law firm, for example, where if you're not tracking your billed hours, you have serious issues, right? So buying into the software and changing the way that your team operates, I think is really, really important. And having folks like you to really carry that message and emphasize like, okay, I'm here to implement process. I'm here to alter process in a way that's effective, but without doing it in such a way that it is overly burdensome, given the reward is really like a fine work of art that you all are doing.
Yeah, and it has to be easy, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Because first of all, if you have to explain it, you've already lost the battle,
Right.
particularly when it comes to attorneys.
Yes.
But like you've lost.
Yeah.
But then also you don't want for it to take more time to use the tool than if they were doing it the way that they've been doing it. Because what you're going to
Right.
hear is, why am I doing this? It's taking me 15 minutes to do this when I can have this done in 5 minutes.
Right.
Yeah.
So ease of use of a platform is really, really very important. And where the legal department is concerned, they like to plug and play. Like they
Yeah.
don't want to, have it be like, 10 steps in order to get something done. They
Right.
just want to have a few clicks and they're off and running.
Yeah, absolutely. The one thing that I implemented with my team at DraftKings was there were certain things that we had to track because there were certain questions that we always got, right? Just on a regular basis. Like if we were doing a particular type of deal, there were certain things that we needed to make sure we were doing user-generated tagging for, and it was just, hey, this is going to take you a couple extra seconds to actually, do this, but it's going to save you in the long run. And like your contract, you got the signatures, but it's not done until it's in the system, until it's exactly where you want it to be, so that the next time, maybe it's not you, maybe it's somebody else that is getting a call from the head of marketing who's on the team saying, hey, while at dinner on a Saturday Saturday evening with family, saying, hey, I need this answer and I need it in the next, 60 minutes because we got a promotion going live. Like that's the kind of stuff where like I really push people to think about their contract process differently and in the context of your technology. So you're looking for an end state and not necessarily just figuring out a process that maybe makes more sense, right? For the sake of process itself. Mm-hmm. So. As far as technology that you wish existed that doesn't, any ideas?
I don't know if I would say there's something that doesn't exist, but having a one-stop shop.
Okay.
Doesn't quite exist yet. You can a la carte from many places.
Yeah.
Right. So I think that's what I see for the future.
Yeah.
Something has it all. In
Right.
a sense.
Makes sense.
I think integrations are important because there isn't
Yeah.
a one-stop shop. So
Right.
if there's one thing that I would like to make sure exists with everything is that it integrates.
Right.
Right.
Because they're different companies do different things, and
Right.
so no one has been, I don't want to say smart enough, but no one's really come up with a one-stop shop type of situation. And so I just wish that as a standard, systems communicated with one another so there weren't silos to do what you need to do.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Questions, Alyssa? Do we have any questions from the audience today?
We do. So the first one is, you've talked a lot about building relationships. How do you manage expectations with other teams?
Yeah, I manage them by first showing up. So, if I'm driving something, then I want to be that person who is showing up, who is following up, who is doing what I said I was going to do,
Yeah.
and making sure that I'm doing what I need to do.
Yeah, the follow-up is key. Even if, things aren't on track and you were supposed to, get something completed by X date, you still say, this is still in progress, we're still working on it. That follow-up is critical.
The biggest complaint that I've received from, even just criticisms of teams that I've built and run, but also colleagues of mine who have built and run teams, is if somebody is asked what's going on with something in legal and that somebody doesn't have an answer, like, I don't know, it's in legal, that's literally something that will come back and really tarnish the brand of your department.
Yeah.
And it creates a lot of dissent, right, amongst your coworkers. Like, that's a terrible thing to say. Like, they asked you for help and they have no idea what you're doing. It's really, really bad. So that follow-up and that transparency is absolutely key.
Yeah.
Great question. Alyssa, what else do we have?
All right. What do you think the number one quality is that leaders should look for in their first legal ops hire?
Ooh. I'll go first.
Okay.
Well, I said one of them before, patience, right? Curiosity.
Yeah.
And the third one I said, I think there's only one, but oops, I'm going to say three. An initiative.
Nice.
Those are really huge.
For me, I would say a diversity of thought, that they are able to, switch from, this area to that area. So they're not like pigeonholed into one area of the business. So I would definitely not want my first hire to be like a contracts manager, because unless they possess those skills and that background, that they've done some other things in an organization to be able to be like a jack of all trades, because I can't be the only jack of all trades. I need someone else who,
Right.
so and in all, honesty, I probably would want someone like me, someone who can do the things that I can do, so that I can trust them to do those things so I can do the other things I need to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And from my perspective, I think, I think it's really kind of a combination of both. I think that the curiosity is really important. A lot of legal teams have a tendency to operate in a very rigid way, and usually when asked, it's because that's how and why we've always done things this way. But having that curiosity to say, okay, maybe this will work differently with the business and provide certain benefits, I think is really important. And it also helps to challenge that we've always done it aspect. And then Vanessa, putting one word on how you described that first hire, I would say perspective. someone with a broader perspective. And I try to hire people who are better at what they do than I am. And like a lot of that is bringing perspective. And like if you can look at the way a legal department's operating without actually being in the legal department, and not that legal ops isn't in the legal department, but like for my first legal ops hire, like come in, look at the functions and dysfunctions of this, and let's talk about what's most important, and being able to demonstrate that perspective and how the legal team should interact with the rest of the organization. Like everything else is just details from there if you've got someone who really has that honed in. So I can't wait to hire a legal ops person. I'm really excited, really excited about it. Alyssa, what else do we have?
Okay, one last one is, you're in LinkSquares every day. What is your favorite feature?
Go ahead.
Okay, so like I said, we use LinkSquares Analyze.
Yep.
And one of my favorite features is the global terms.
Yes.
And being able, because the ask from our GC prior to having LinkSquares was, I just want to have a sheet of paper that gives me the information that I want. And so when we looked at LinkSquares and saw the global terms, and that you could just go down and look for whatever terms that you were looking for, I was like, this is it for me. So
Yeah.
yes, that's the first, it's my go-to is the global terms.
That's awesome.
So I have two. I'm going to cheat again. When I was drafting and working on contracts, I really loved the nudge feature. That was so fun to use. But in the legal ops perspective, I really love the dashboards.
Yeah.
I love that they're customizable. We've made quite a few that help us provide those better metrics, and I love that.
Yeah.
I love seeing them. It's my favorite feature.
Yeah, same. I spend the most of my time in the platform on the dashboard side.
Mm-hmm.
Really, I've been fortunate enough to not have to be reviewing as many contracts these days. We got now, thankfully, a team of people who are better at it than I am to do it. So the dashboards, I'll echo that. I think it's been great. And then on the analyze side, I mean, gosh, yeah, the global terms and reporting characteristics for me, like being able to run a report on whatever it is that I'm looking for, like super narrow, not having to flip pages is super important to me, and it's a huge time saver. So and I know we're running up on time. Any closing thoughts, maybe around people who are looking to get into legal ops career? Any closing words of advice, words of caution, anything like that, or any other parting words you'd like to give the folks watching today?
Well, I'd say if a person is looking to get into legal ops, make sure that you like being the problem solver,
Okay.
Or being the answer, and that you can get into the weeds in research, being able to research things, and being able to create a process, being able to fix a process, and most of all, being able to listen to the team so that you can, create solutions.
Awesome.
I would echo that, and I would also say, if you don't have the answer, don't beat yourself up right away. Because taking from experience, that's what I did, right? I was like, I don't have all the answers, but I will get them. I will figure it out. And so having that persistence is key, and not giving up on what you were trying to accomplish for your team and others. Yeah, it's huge.
Awesome. Thanks so much for taking time and sitting down today. This has been a lot of fun. It's been great. And let's go get some dinner.
Yeah.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Cool.
Thank you so
All right.
much.
Thanks. Thanks for joining us today. Please like, subscribe, follow us on all the socials. We got a bunch of content coming out over the coming weeks and months. So really looking forward to having you all part of the audience out there.